I've watched the first episode of the new WWE Network show Ruthless Aggression. It's a documentary about what happens after the Monday Night Wars. I believe just as I went to record this, episode 2 is now available, but I want to discuss episode 1 first. Don't know how many episodes there are in the series, but this continues on from what happened after the Monday Night Wars, the Attitude Era, whatever you want to call it, the battle between WCW and the WWE. And I'll get to the WWE portion later. This documentary is about 41 minutes long. The first few minutes are, of course, I'm not going to try and go right through this documentary, but the first few minutes are the recap of the Monday Night Wars. There is a documentary series, The Monday Night Wars, on the network, so if you do want to watch that, I would suggest go ahead and watch it. I've been a fan of wrestling for about 36 years on now, from World of Sport, grew up watching WCW, even before the NWO era. So it's just a shame to see how WCW was really treated and how basically it was written out of professional wrestling, because they do discuss the invasion angle on this. The invasion angle was a failure, to be honest. We all know that. A lot of the young WCW guys were had some talent. Shane Helms, Chavo Guerrero Jr., some of the other guys, Mark Jindrak, who we hear from surprisingly a bit in this documentary, or this episode anyway. We hear from him. They had some potential talent, but they weren't ready to be in the positions they were for, like, sort of the Natural Born Thrillers, I think they were called, in WCW, the whole group of them, Mark Jindrak, Sean O'Hare, etc. They weren't ready. WCW didn't bring on new talent, and let's be honest, a big part of why the invasion angle fell flat, because whenever we fantasy booked it years ago, before this happened, it was always the huge stars of WCW versus the huge stars of WWE. And with those not being available, and this is unfortunately a very WWE spin documentary series. I unfortunately see that happening, and I think a lot of people are seeing that, and I'll watch episode 2 later on, but it's heavily WWE spun. Really unfortunate that. And they try and claim that some of the contracts that were out there weren't worth us picking up. Well, in fact, actually, some of the contracts weren't even available. There were a few stars, I'm not going to say who exactly, but I do know it's been confirmed even by AOL, Time Warner, or whoever the company was, because of all the takeovers at that point. They would not release a couple of the WCW stars. I think Sting may have been one of them. I think Goldberg was one. There were certainly a couple that they would not, just simply would not release. I think WWE would have had to have offered ridiculously silly few $1 million for each contract for them to even consider it. So not having the huge stars like Sting and Goldberg and Ric Flair, the invasion angle was always doomed, and unfortunately it's very quickly dealt with. It's pretty much glanced over without even a mention of ECW or the Alliance. And there was legal stuff, of course, everybody knows about WWE using ECW when they'd not quite cleared the trademarks and the video library and whatever it was that they had to clear. They started using ECW name, but it's just positioned as WCW versus WWE again. Maybe WWE spin, because I think WWE cleared the ECW stuff now. They must have, because all the stuff they've just added. I looked that just before just before I recorded this video. They've just added some more of ECW Super Shows to the network, so they've obviously got the rights to everything now. So it's very quickly glanced over, but it's a failure. We all know that. Creatively, WWE are having a rough time, and a lot of things as discussed on the programme are not the greatest. They're trying to keep their edge. Brian Gerwitz, the head writer, talks about that as well. We even hear a lot from Bruce Pritchard right throughout this episode. He's kind of talking us through the episode and talk about through what happens, but everybody knows, and I don't know who it is in WWE that's behind making these. A lot of these documentaries are really good, but again, this one is so obviously WWE spun. To the victors goes the spoils and the opportunity to write the history of what happened. Whether the other, you say the Greeks and the Romans, for example, if you're Greek and you eliminate the Romans may have actually been innocent people just trying to live their lives, but you can write, oh, they were a threat to us, they were attacking us, etc., where that's not the case. So they're writing it. It's a real pity, because that does come into it a bit on the documentary, on this episode anyway, which is a real shame. But we hear about them kind of dealing with the WCW talent and the whole fresh crop of talent coming in to the company, and that's one thing that, see, just before I get into talent and developmental talent and so forth, the WWE name, they talk about the WWE name, and it's spun like it was Vince McMahon or WWE's idea to go, instead of being the World Wrestling Federation, it's a new era, it's a new time in this industry, so we'll go World Wrestling Entertainment. We'll have a brand new name and brand new sense of direction, which I will admit, the new name, the timing couldn't have been better, to be honest, for the company. It was a new era, it was a new time in sports entertainment, and it generally, obviously the company were going in a brand new direction. Creatively, as we hear, not all of it was great. It's not the greatest match-wise or creative in some areas that there was. It's kind of why I think it's been so long until they've got round to making such a documentary series. But the initial stages after WrestleMania 17 and 18 weren't the greatest. There wasn't really that emphasis. There weren't as that particular direction that the company was being pulled in as before. They were making their programs more PG, more child friendly, more family friendly, really. And it wasn't the greatest time, let's be honest, in WWE. And they just take it and spin it like it was their idea to change the name, where it actually was the lawsuit with the World Wildlife Fund for Nature that ended up having them to change their name, and it's not mentioned at all. It's spun, like I said, like, as many people are saying, like it was WWE or Vince McMahon's idea to go in that direction, to change the name and to move really basically what they were doing. Where we all know it wasn't. It's been covered, like the Business Wars podcast, and it's always talked about in various podcasts, and Bruce Pritchard's own podcasts, and so many. Attitude Era is one of the most put under microscope eras in the industry. This is a major part of ending that era and beginning the Ruthless Aggression era, and it's just, I don't know why they've done it. It just baffles me a little bit into why they do it. And again, moving on, because I really don't have a clue. Maybe they'll address it in episode 2. I don't know, but I doubt it. I think that'll be that kind of covered with. But we all know what the truth about what happened was. We all know it was a lawsuit, and not just let's change the company's name. Because I don't think Vince would have let go of the World Wrestling Federation name if he had been able to do so. If he'd been able to keep it, I don't think he would have let it go. But they move on, talk about obviously the WCW and roster. Had a lot of guys come in. The whole lot of guys. So Christian actually talks about a lot of people concerned about their TV time, and they ended up. I'll just fast forward a little bit. Goes to the breakup of the brand split of Raw and SmackDown, and how it could potentially give new opportunities for guys. So like say, I think as Christian says, you got limited television space. You've got say 30 guys all vying to get on a show, but then they're more likely to get a spot on a show if the half goes to SmackDown, half goes to Raw, and you've only got a certain amount of talent. Obviously WWE were letting go talent at this point a little bit over this invasion angle and so forth. It'll kind of fall out. They weren't wanting to keep everybody, which is also ignored. But we hear about them, obviously the competition driving each other, Raw driving SmackDown, who had the great show we hear about, and I will say what I want to say. I'm trying to kind of skip through a few things, but I will say one thing. And then again, I think it's Christian talks about, SmackDown getting good audiences at their live shows, getting good television ratings. That's actually genuinely true. At some points they were outdrawing Raw for live event attendance and ratings. Occasionally they were, because they had guys like Edge and Christian, Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio, I believe was on, Eddie Guerrero I think may have been on SmackDown. I'm sure he was, because there was the SmackDown Tag Team Championship tournament, which I do want to go back and watch at some point. And that was, and also they had Team Angle, Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas at that stage. They had really, really good wrestling talent on that show. So it's something that if people hear about it, because obviously as Christian says, SmackDown was and still is considered to be the B show. It's a genuine thing. A lot of the magazines that I was reading at that time, those kind of days, they were reporting the figures, and absolutely true, it's facts that SmackDown was outdrawing Raw sometimes and in some places. I don't want to go make this video too long, so it's very quick. The developmental talent, we do get about, of course, this Ruthless Aggression, and we will see in next episode, it seems, because we see at the end of the episode John Cena make his debut after that open challenge by Kurt Angle. There is a discussion about developmental talent, Ohio Valley Wrestling. We see Batista, Cena and Orton, and we hear about them being brought through. And I would love, just quickly, I would love actually a historical kind of documentary talking about WWE's developmental history, about from acquiring talent when Vince McMahon took over from his father, how they looked for talent, how they acquired talent, through to the various different organisations they used throughout the United States. I think UPW in California, there was Memphis Wrestling, had some guys like Kurt Angle started training there, I think, or had certainly spent some period there, and I think The Rock did as well. To Ohio Valley Wrestling, where they had Cena and Batista and Orton. That's when they were starting to focus their developmental program into one place, and then obviously on to things like NXT and how it is now. I love it, just an independent documentary on that, which I don't see happening for quite some time. But we get to see it, and it's quite interesting at the end of the documentary. Vince McMahon, well, near the end, pretty much the end of the documentary, Vince McMahon standing in the ring with several superstars on the apron, like Eddie Guerrero, JBL, who was just simply Bradshaw at that point. Even I believe he has the cowboy hat on. And Vince Ruth challenges those guys to step up and become the new thing. And this is all on behalf of Bite. This bit is quite interesting as well, because it's basically Kevin Kelly on what was really an unusual show for WWE, kayfabe-less show. Basically, just say, right, ratings are down. Stone Cold Steve Austin's not happy with direction, and that was also at the point where Steve Austin was being told by doctors to retire. His marriage was breaking down. That issue's been covered a lot of times, but Austin was really having to to be told anyway that he would have to bow out of WWE, where he really didn't want to, and that's been well covered over the years as well. And several of the guys that Vince actually addresses, he particularly goes up to JBL. JBL steps up. Eddie Guerrero steps up. He becomes even better performer than he was, and he's a really fantastic performer. So it's going to be the next episode as new talent comes through. Batista will be introduced. Cena's obviously said introduced right at the end of the program, and we'll get to see the new stars taking over as Stone Cold bows out. The Rock goes off to Hollywood as mentioned, and obviously at this point I think Triple H was on the whereabouts of coming back, but Taker was starting to slow down his schedule slightly, and I'm sure they'll focus on those guys and where they were in the roles within WWE in the next couple of episodes. But it's a really decent episode. Like I said, this episode is a lot of WWE spin. Unfortunately, there's a lot of well, we decided to do this, not we were forced to do this, or we had to do this, or we were struggling at this point. It's a lot of WWE spin. I don't think the ratings were consistently as good, although they hinted it. They talk about the Raw and SmackDown driving each other in competition. The ratings weren't, and the wrestling product wasn't as good as they kind of almost to present it as at that point. But I look forward to seeing however many episodes there are in this series. Hopefully we will get some good stuff, but I do feel, like I said, unfortunately it feels like there is going to be a lot of WWE spin in this documentary series, which is a real shame. Things like the name change, the ratings maybe, but I hope that we do get at least a fair-ish version of the truth as we move forward. And I don't know what time period they're going to actually involve with this program. There's some rumours, some people say it might be up to like maybe 2010 or 2009, 2010 time period. I don't know. I think it may be in just 2006, 2007, 2008 maybe. But certainly looking forward to seeing the next episode of Ruthless Aggression, seeing where it takes us, because after all this time, it's now 2020, after almost a decade, we're starting to get into towards a decade of this era starting, the Ruthless Aggression era starting. It will be good to see, when looking back, whether we think that that era was actually, well, yeah, it was as bad as we thought it was, because a lot of casual fans were in the process of switching off, as mentioned in it. But, or, was this really a transitional period for WWE? Was it a good period? Was it a bad period? Is it as good or as bad as we remember? That's the thing that I'll be looking to see as we move forward in this documentary series. But certainly, I would say to people, again, check out the Monday Night Wars documentary series and check out Ruthless Aggression, especially if you're too young to not be around in those times. I'm looking forward to seeing how WWE presents this timeline as we go further and delve further into the Ruthless Aggression documentary series. I said available. Episode 1 and episode 2 are now available on the WWE Network.